So the format's going to be that I will introduce them as I ask them a question, so you'll get to know who's on the panel. So we'll save a little bit of time as well. Robert, I want to come to you first. So Robert Andren is the Director General of the Swedish Energy Agency. Started working there in 2018, but he's had a long and illustrious career in the sector. He was previously the Director General for Energy at the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Sweden. We've seen your name on the screens everywhere, right at the bottom. You're clearly engaged in the project. What is so significant from the Swedish Energy Agency's perspective about the electric side?
I mean, it's a glimpse into the future. This is the future. And now we have a lot of projects going on. And I would say that some of those are high-profile projects. This is one of them. Because it actually shows that you can have concrete results. And having seen the results during the day, and the learnings from the project, I think it's purely a rhetorical question. Who will not do this in the future, in the business of quarries? So for us it's important from that perspective, because we've seen, you talked about the IPCC. Mm-hmm. We've seen the Swedish national high ambition goals and targets when it comes to climate also. So for us it's a question of being a facilitator of making things happen. So being a co-fund for this project and many others, it makes me very pleased. And it makes me somewhat proud actually that we have Swedish companies being front runners, as they are. And I think that's good for the climate, it's good for the business, it's good for Sweden. And at the end of the day, I think that makes possibilities of exporting these systems and these products to other parts of the world, which is also good for our country.
So were you surprised by the results that have been revealed today?
I was told this Monday, but
okay.
Yeah, of course, I'm surprised.
Surprised on Monday?
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
In some aspects that we've seen these figures so quickly in this short time of period. And I think that what can happen out here is that it can only improve, can only be better. This is some kind of a test, right? Mm-hmm. So that makes me very, very positive. And one thing more I think that we should not underestimate is actually the fact that everyone involved in this project seems to have huge energy. It makes them positive, creative, innovative, and that is a very good spiral. So I think that is something that we need much more.
So Robert, you are, in a sense, Sweden's Mr. Energy, aren't you? So when we think about the electrification that needs to go into these quarry sites, where do you see the future in providing clean energy into these systems, the challenge of the infrastructure in these remote sites? What can you do to help facilitate that?
Well, I think that what we also are able to do and be a catalyzer of is actually getting actors and partners together, be the arena for meetings, matchmaker, if you want. And I think that this is also a case showing the strength of cooperation, because we need that. So that is one thing. And then we have all the whole, evolution of Internet of Things. Everything will be connected. So, of course, this will also be part of that, but it has its challenges depending on where it is geographically and aspects like that. And we have the grid that we need to look into. We need to reinvest, and we need to find new solutions to secure the increased electricity of the society.
Thank you. I want to bring in a few other panelists now. So, Sven, if I can come to you. So, Sven Hunhammer, for the last 2 years you've been the Director of Sustainability and Environment at the Swedish Transport Administration. Yeah. I mean, given that you're probably, I think I'm right in saying this, the biggest procurer of infrastructure in Sweden, how do you go about setting these targets, these procurement specifications for carbon reduction, and how successful have you been?
Actually, we are the biggest procurer any area, not just infrastructure, because we're buying for 50 billion Swedish krona every year out of a total public procurement of some 600 plus. So with this big power, we also see we have a huge responsibility. We want to contribute to this change. So since 2 years back, 2016, we've had climate procurement requirements on almost every procurement we do. And the target is 15, we compared to 2015, and we want to reduce to 15% for 2020 and 30% to 2025. So since we started 2016, this project was not just a case study that was shown by Ida before, is actually a real project, and the calculation shows that we, in that project, only one decreased emissions by 20%. So we're actually doing it. And it's fantastic.
And have you got a similar aspiration for the 50% by 2030? Have you worked that?
We haven't particularly set it down yet, but at least 50%, and also incentives for a totally climate neutral. And we also have the vision for a climate neutral by 2045. And the way we buy bridges, roads, rails, and so forth. So we want to have good bridges, rails, and roads, but we also add the climate requirement. So then, in that procurement, we want to have the lowest cost. And so far, I guess we have picking the low fruits. I mean, it's like fuels and better management and logistics and so forth. But this, I guess, is a little bit higher hanging fruit outside here. Mm-hmm. But we want to create a market for those coming fruits, and obviously new steel production and new blends of concrete. And I mean, we're moving along.
Can I just challenge you on something you said? You mentioned lowest cost, and actually, I thought what we're trying to achieve is value for money. You know, we want affordability, and we want to do the right thing by the climate, you know, and resource efficiency. So, is it about value for money for your Swedish Transport Administration, or is it just still about lowest cost, but we want all the extra bits?
No. We want the targets to be reached. So we set the target. We want the bridge, or the project, but then we want to have lower emissions, and then we go for lowest cost. So that's.
So there's a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to have a lower emissions on that particular project.
Great, because your previous procurement models have just gone down to lowest cost, and actually, as a result of it, we buy some of the unintended consequences, which is, you know, a higher heavy intensity around carbon. So what specifically in your procurement strategy is intelligent, and how does the market perceive that and understand it?
I think we set this target in collaboration with the market, and I think there is a lot of mutual understanding, and one of the key words here is cooperation. So I think we've had a lot of good feedbacks from companies like Skanska, for example.
And finally, you know, when you look out and you see the possibility of the electric site, what does that mean for you again? In, you know, what you can then be starting to challenge for the future around these targets?
Obviously, we're still picking low-hanging fruits, and we need. I think companies like Skanska and Volvo and a lot of others needs to know there will be markets, and we are so big that we sort of make sure that we'll be a market for better things coming up. So I think I guess it's a good trust for these guys.
Fantastic. Yeah. So now I'd like to bring in the third panelist, and that's Andre Osterud. Andre, welcome. You're the Senior Advisor with the Climate Agency at the City of Oslo. Just tell us a little bit about your ambitions around reducing greenhouse gas emissions and what you've done on the procurement space as a city in terms of how you put together the infrastructure and the construction.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, it's great to be here and have this great view of both of you and also the future, I feel. So Oslo has set some pretty ambitious targets as a city to reduce emissions by 95% by 2030. Well, that's direct emissions, I should underline. So embodied carbon that was mentioned earlier in buildings, etc., and infrastructure projects, that's not part of that target. And then we have estimated that, or in 2016, we estimated emissions from construction sites within the city of Oslo to be about 8% of total emissions. So that means that we also have to look at this segment in our procurement in order to have a chance to meet our target. And then the city of Oslo itself is about 20% of the market for construction in Oslo. So it's an important actor in the market. And now we have a new procurement strategy that specifies that zero emission solutions is the starting point. And on construction sites in particular, the minimum requirement now for publicly run construction sites, or where the city is commissioning the project, is fossil free and emissions free where possible. So in reality, what that means is that most sites have bought second generation biofuels to meet the fossil free requirement. And there are some examples also of then emission free construction machinery, so battery electric being used, but to a much, much smaller extent. So our goal is now to take the next step to set requirements for emission-free machinery as well. And there are some new construction sites now where the tendering process will specify emission-free equipment as the minimum requirement.
So just thinking about the electrification, I mean, Norway is almost a front runner regarding electrification. How do you see the development of electrification of construction equipment, you know, given what you've learned today around this electric site? I mean, what will you go back into, both to Norway, but also back to the city and say, you know, these are some things that we should be considering or could consider, that, you know, looking into the future, buying the future, as Robert was saying?
Yeah, I mean, essentially we've been trying to buy something that doesn't exist. So that's been the requirement. So it's nice to see that it's starting to become a reality. That's one thing we take home. And then one issue that has come up, we did a survey, sort of an evaluation of the projects that have been done the last few years. And one issue that has come up is the access to electricity, that is barrier to sort of getting emission-free equipment integrated into projects. And that's a planning issue mainly. That's been the feedback from the construction industry. And that's also something that was brought up today, is the sort of you lose a little bit of flexibility, but you have to plan better. And that's also on the procurement side. You need to plan better to be able to integrate the electricity need, for instance, in the whole project. I have an example in that case. We're building a new metro line in Oslo, and instead of putting the power on the rail at the end of the project, they will put the power in the beginning, and thereby you will actually have the access to electricity throughout the construction period.
Right, excellent. So I've got one final question for you, and it's a little bit cheeky because I know we're amongst a Swedish audience, and I just want to get them a bit jealous. So, you know, tell me, what's it going to be like for the city of Oslo to be the European Green Capital in 2019?
Yeah. Well, we'll show off a lot of Teslas and electric cars, but no, certainly it's a great possibility to showcase some of the solutions that we think we have, and especially on sort of electric mobility so far in the private car segment. I think we have some policies to show for.
Yeah, maybe some special announcements about what the future might look like, particularly for infrastructure and construction.
Yeah,
with some great Swedish businesses as well.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Hopefully.
I'm just trying to make sure you get out here alive. So.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Don't push us into this.
Okay, I'd like to introduce the fourth panelist now, and that's Scott Young. Scott Young is the Director of Electromobility at Volvo Construction Equipment, and he's really responsible for the company's electromobility market strategy. So I think the big question, at least from me, is how do you actually see that development of electromobility more broadly in the construction sector?
I mean, it's continuing to grow. I mean, what we see out here, I mean, the future is right now. And the ability for us with the technology advancement and now the pull that we get either through regulation or our customers setting really strong targets on what they want to achieve to be part of the solution, that's creating the space for us to take this leadership position and really advance it much faster. And I would say it's going to continue to go faster and faster than we've ever seen it before.
But are there any particular challenges that we need to unblock to get that speed that we need to move things faster?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, through all of the programming, you've seen that they've encountered many challenges. I think one of the key things is that we have to deal with new technologies in a robust environment. And so that's where we have to dare to try. We have to continue to dare to try and continue to push it forward and put those technologies there because we see the opportunity. We also have to keep the regulatory aspect on the safety directives and all of the things that support that we have a good environment for our products for people to work with. Those regulations and directives have to keep up with the technology. So we have to continue to change and advance those as we go through the process. And then I think the biggest challenge and probably the best opportunity is for us to create this growth mindset. When you talk about cost, you had a perspective before, but creating the space where people start to look at things in a different way, using a different lens to really use the diversity that we have in the collaboration to really find new solutions to optimize the technology and advance it even further together.
But how do we make that an attractive proposition to seek the investment that we require? You know, so, I mean, can I just bring you in, Robert, because you've obviously invested in this program. But there has to be almost a leap of faith to say that, you know, we need to explore this and we need some funding to do that. What's the criterion? You know, that bit of investment that leads to the partnerships and collaboration is so essential. What advice would you give to Volvo and Skanska and others? How do we make it happen? Yes, please. Yeah. Sorry, it's and others can join in now. But yeah,
I'll help. I'll go with you.
I mean, it's a question. I think what we can do from the public side is actually to be much better in pooling our resources. So a lot of agencies and authorities with a lot of possible funding opportunities to actually make clear, go together and say these are the challenges in society. These are the things where we should pool up our resources, our competence, our knowledge, and then make that map very easy to understand from the private sector, so that we can join hands, depending on where they are in their projects and which stage, so to say, and for us then to see how can we facilitate, how can we add funds to the project. At the moment, I think we are perhaps not talking in the early stage that we need to talk. And we need to be more proactive. Now things are happening, and then we say, okay, could we do something up here? And then perhaps we have more difficulties with the regulation or with the administration and whatever within both the public and private side.
Okay, so can I just ask this follow-up? Because I think, and I'll bring you in, Scott, sorry. But you've got 3 public sector agencies here, including you, Andre, for Oslo, okay? How could you be collaborating together to give that extra push around electromobility so that this becomes not the future, but it is right now and it gets scaled up? Because it's a scaling up that were the issue. You can't do it on your own. So how do we do it together? And what will you do differently as a result of being here today? So maybe Andre.
Yeah, well, I think pooling sort of purchasing power is one way to send a stronger sort of demand signal to the market. And I also think that we do need international collaboration on this issue. And we, for instance, there are these city networks like C40 that has initiatives to sort of create a buyers club, etc., in order to be able to better sort of send a demand signal to the market that would actually shift the market. I mean, Oslo is way too small to shift the market on this machinery.
No, but combined with the other cities in
Exactly.
Sweden, for example. So Sven, what's your thoughts?
We have collaborations on
Oh,
other
yeah.
sites like electrical roads, for example, the other demo sites, and we don't collaborate with Oslo, but with big Swedish cities of Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö on setting the same regulations so it's easier for the market to adapt and the same
And what do you think?
documentations and stuff.
So what do you think about actually a bigger pool of procurers with a bigger signal to the market saying, this is what we're looking for, so invest in the innovation, the R&D to drive these solutions.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to cooperate?
As I said, we have that collaboration
But we
already.
need to go bigger.
We can expand, absolutely.
We need to go bigger. What's your thoughts, Scott? Would that be a good signal to Volvo to make you... Or are you going to go and do this anyhow because you see the opportunity?
We see the opportunity. I mean, but we have a long journey ahead of us, so we have to have these spaces and these openings and the collaboration. I mean, we've heard in every presentation today, together is the key. And I would challenge you on a statement I heard from you earlier when you said leadership is a very lonely place. But I think our responsibility as leaders is to create the space for growth in everything that we touch. So creating that space for growth, creating partnerships where we give the flexibility to really bring in these solutions and really try these things, that's what we need, absolutely, to keep this train moving forward.
Sven?
But to be honest, public procurement is rather difficult. I mean, there's a lot of EU regulations, and we have to have a certain pace. So we have a market. I mean, we can't only buy from the leaders because we'll be only one seller. So we have to have a little bit bigger, and then we have to have a pace that is sort of moving this along. So it's not very easy to just buy innovation.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
We try to do that.
But this is where, as leaders, we need to influence the politicians to create the frameworks that enable the innovation to come through, drive the climate action. So I'm hoping there's all of you are leaving today as leaders as well. I mean, I take your point. We all need some leadership in this direction. So what I'd like to do now is thank you all very much for your participation. I'm conscious of the time. I know we've got some lunch to get, and there's some buses that have to leave on time. And I think we would all benefit from a bit of networking. So can the audience please join me in thanking the panelists? So thank you very much.